I'm Anil Kumar, and now let us understand inverse of our functions. Now here is inverse of absolute function. Question here is, sketch the inverse of function g of x equals to absolute x. Is the inverse of absolute function a function? Explain. Write domain and range of the inverse relation. Okay, let's first sketch absolute x and then we will do inverse of absolute x. Now absolute x is a function which is like this, right? You all know about it, so we'll not get into detail of that. And this is what we are saying is absolute x. Now inverse of this function, will it be a function or not? That is the first question. Now how do we know it? If I draw a horizontal line, correct? Now this horizontal line intersects at 2 points. Since it intersects at 2 points, inverse will not be a function. So this part can be answered as inverse will not be a function since g of x fails horizontal line test. You can imagine if I flip it or reflect it on y equals to x, then horizontal line becomes a vertical line, so the inverse will fail the vertical line test. So that is the gist of it, right? Now the second part is write domain and range of the inverse function. So let us first sketch the inverse function. Now if you want to sketch the inverse function, it is to be reflected on y equals to x, correct? So when you reflect, the right half, which is in quadrant 1, remains there it is. So let me just sketch it as it is, like this, right? And this portion which is in second quadrant will be reflected in the fourth quadrant. So we'll get like this. So that is g inverse x, right? That is g inverse x. So that is a sketch of inverse of the function, right? And now we can write domain and range of the inverse. So what is the domain and range of g inverse? So g inverse x domain is, you can see, greater than equal to real numbers, right? So we have x belongs to real numbers where x is greater than equal to 0. And as far as range is concerned, there is no restriction on range. So y belongs to real numbers. So in this case, you have seen, if you consider the function f of x, it had no restriction on domain. Inverse has no restriction on range. So they flip, right? Domain range flips. Here in the function, range is restricted. Range is greater than equal to 0, but it becomes the domain of the inverse function. So that's the key to it. So whenever you are doing inverse of a function, domain of the function becomes range of inverse function, and range of the function becomes domain of the inverse function, right? And to test whether the inverse will be a function or not, horizontal line test is performed. I hope that helps. Thank you.